Dr. Alan Reeves had perfected the art of invisibility over 2 decades. To the world, and especially to his only son Ethan, he was simply a quiet widower who worked at a modest local clinic, lived in a 3-bedroom house with creaky floorboards in an unremarkable suburban neighborhood, and drove a 10-year-old silver sedan with a small dent on the rear bumper that he never bothered to fix. His clothes came from department stores, his watch was a basic Timex, and his vacations consisted of long weekends fishing at a nearby lake or reading medical journals on the back porch. No one suspected that this unassuming man was one of the most respected cardiologists in the country. He had pioneered minimally invasive techniques for complex valve repairs that were now taught in teaching hospitals across North America and Europe. He owned 3 state-of-the-art private cardiac centers that generated millions in annual revenue. His personal net worth exceeded $12 million, with over $35,000 arriving in passive income every single month from investments, real estate holdings, and medical patents. Yet none of that wealth was visible in his daily life. It had not always been this way. 20 years earlier, when his beloved wife Margaret succumbed to an aggressive form of breast cancer, Alan's world shattered. The grief was compounded by the realization that money, even substantial money, could not buy more time. During her illness, they had spent everything they had and more on experimental treatments, second opinions, and comfort care. In the aftermath, Alan discovered something even more painful. Sudden displays of wealth changed how people treated you. Old friends became overly solicitous, colleagues grew envious, women who had never noticed him before suddenly found him fascinating. He wanted none of it. For Ethan's sake, he chose deliberate simplicity. He wanted his son to understand the value of hard work, integrity, kindness, and self-reliance, not bank balances. So Alan continued practicing medicine with quiet excellence while living as an ordinary man. Ethan, now 32, believed his father was a dedicated but financially strained doctor who had sacrificed everything to raise him alone. The deception had been maintained so consistently and for so long that it felt like truth. That illusion began to crack on a warm Thursday evening in late spring. Alan was sitting on his back porch with a cup of herbal tea when his phone rang. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. "Dad? Hey, you free to talk for a minute?" "Of course, son. Everything okay?" There was a nervous energy in Ethan's voice. "Sophia's parents are flying in next weekend. They really want to meet you. They have invited us to dinner on their yacht next Saturday. It's important to them." Alan smiled faintly at the phone. Sophia Langford had entered Ethan's life 2 years earlier, like a whirlwind of laughter and ambition. She was sharp, kind-hearted beneath her polished exterior, and genuinely in love with Ethan. Alan had liked her from the start, but her family was another matter. "Tell them I would be delighted," Alan said calmly. "Dad, they are different, really wealthy. They like things refined. Just be yourself, okay? They can be a bit much, but they mean well." "Do not worry, Ethan, I will be there, looking forward to it." As soon as the call ended, Alan leaned back in his chair and stared at the fading sunset. He had already made his decision. They wanted to meet Ethan's father. Then, they would meet the version Ethan had always described, the simple, ordinary clinic doctor. This would be more than a social dinner. It would be a test of character. Saturday arrived bright and cloudless. Alan dressed with care for the role he intended to play. He chose his oldest navy polo shirt, one that had faded after years of washing, slightly frayed khaki pants, and comfortable brown loafers, worn smooth at the heels. No expensive watch, no leather belt. He carried an old scuffed medical bag that had traveled with him through residency and countless night shifts. His silver sedan looked even more modest, parked among the luxury vehicles at the marina. The Langford's yacht Legacy dominated the dock, an 80-foot gleaming white vessel with tinted windows, a helicopter pad, and a uniformed crew moving efficiently across the decks. Victor and Elena Langford stood waiting on the main deck, like figures from a luxury advertisement. Victor was tall, silver-haired, and tanned, wearing a crisp white linen shirt, tailored navy trousers, and sunglasses that probably cost more than Alan's car. Elena shimmered in a flowing silk designer dress, the color of expensive champagne. Heavy gold jewelry caught the sunlight with every gesture. Ethan stood between them, looking handsome in a sport coat, but visibly anxious. He said warmly, pulling Alan into a hug. "This is Victor and Elena Langford, Sophia's parents." Elena extended 2 fingers in a limp, reluctant handshake.
"So nice to finally meet you, Alan. Ethan has mentioned you work at a little clinic downtown."
"Yes," Alan replied softly, keeping his eyes slightly lowered in practiced humility. "I have been a doctor for many years now."
Victor gave him a quick appraising once-over.
"Medicine is noble work," he said, the tone suggesting it was also poorly compensated. "Though the compensation these days, well, you know how it is." He chuckled as if they were sharing an insider's joke about financial struggle. They moved to the upper deck where a table had been set with fine bone china, crystal stemware, and fresh flowers. A private chef worked in an open galley, while a steward poured chilled vintage wine. The air smelled of expensive cologne, ocean breeze, and grilled seafood. Elena ordered for Alan without consultation. "Bring him the grilled fish, something light. We do not want to overdo it for our guest."
She smiled sweetly, but her eyes remained cool and calculating as the courses progressed.
Delicate amuse-bouches, seared scallops, perfectly cooked halibut. Victor and Elena began their performance. Victor spoke at length about his latest hedge fund returns, the new villa in the Maldives, and the private jet they had recently upgraded. Elena recounted her latest charity gala that had raised over $2 million, carefully noting how much had been spent on decor, catering, and celebrity guests to make it successful.
Alan nodded politely, murmuring appropriate responses. "It sounds wonderful. You must be very proud."
"Oh, we are," Elena replied, glancing at Sophia with satisfaction. "We made sure our daughter never had to struggle, not like some families." Her eyes flicked toward Alan with pointed meaning. Victor leaned back, swirling his wine. "Ethan tells us you raised him alone after his mother passed. That must have been incredibly difficult on a doctor's salary, especially at a public clinic." "It was not easy," Alan admitted, his voice steady. "But we managed. Ethan turned out to be a fine young man. That made every sacrifice worth it." Elena sighed dramatically. "Bless your heart. Raising a child alone is such a heavy burden. We always ensured Sophia had everything. The best schools in Europe, the right connections, the proper experiences. That is why she is now a senior analyst at Victor's firm." The conversation grew steadily more condescending. They discussed the young couple's future, the necessity of a proper home in the right gated community, the importance of maintaining appearances, the kind of social circle they should cultivate. At one point, Elena turned to Alan with feigned maternal concern. "Alan, dear, have you thought about retirement? It must be exhausting working those long clinic hours at your age. We were thinking perhaps we could help. A small monthly allowance, so you wouldn't have to worry Ethan so much. In return, of course, we would appreciate it if you respected the children's space. Young couples need room to grow without external pressures." There it was, the bribe wrapped in concern. Alan set his wineglass down with deliberate calm. The familiar cold focus he used in the operating room descended over him. "That is a very generous offer, Elena," he said, his voice no longer timid. "How much were you thinking?" She hesitated, surprised by the directness. "Well, perhaps $1,500 a month, enough for a comfortable life without being extravagant." Victor nodded approvingly, as if they were closing a reasonable business deal. Alan leaned forward. The shift in his posture was subtle, but unmistakable. $1,500 a month, so I disappear from my son's life and stop being a burden. Interesting. The atmosphere on the deck changed instantly. Ethan looked nervous. Sophia stared at her plate. Elena began, "Alan, you misunderstand." "No," Alan interrupted, his voice firm, clear, and carrying the natural authority of a man who had commanded operating rooms for decades. "I understand perfectly. You have spent the entire evening measuring my worth by what you assume I earn. You have pitied me, insulted my profession, and offered me scraps to stay away, all while bragging about your own wealth." He stood up slowly, no longer shrinking into his chair. The modest, quiet doctor vanished. "Let me introduce myself properly. My name is Dr. Alan Reeves. I am the head of cardiology at St. Matthew's Hospital, one of the largest and most advanced cardiac programs in the region. Perform over 200 complex heart surgeries each year. Many of the techniques I developed are now standard practice in teaching hospitals across the country.
Victor's eyebrows rose sharply. Elena's face lost color beneath her carefully applied makeup.
I also own 3 private cardiac centers, Alan continued. Last year alone, my practices generated over $14 million in revenue. My personal net worth is currently north of $12 million, not including substantial real estate holdings and investment portfolios that continue to appreciate. And I have lived this modestly by choice. Complete silence fell. Even the crew seemed to freeze in place. I chose this life because I wanted my son to grow up valuing hard work and character, not money. I have seen too many lives destroyed by the very thing you appear to worship. I came here dressed like this and acting humble because I needed to know what kind of people my son was marrying into. He pulled out his phone, opened his banking and investment apps, and turned the screen toward them. The balances were impossible to dismiss. Elena looked physically ill. Victor's confident smirk had completely disappeared. You treated me like staff, Alan said quietly. You offered pity and charity while knowing nothing about me. You judged me based on faded clothes and assumptions. Tell me, did all your money buy you wisdom? Did it teach you empathy? Or did it simply make your arrogance more expensive? Sophia had tears in her eyes.
Dr. Reeves, I had no idea. I am so sorry.
Ethan stared at his father in stunned silence. Dad, why did you not ever tell me? Alan looked at his son with deep love. Because I wanted you to be proud of who you are, not what I could buy you. Money is a tool, Ethan, not a measure of a man. Victor attempted to recover. This is highly irregular. You deceived us. I gave you an opportunity, Alan corrected. An opportunity to show basic kindness and respect to someone you believed had less than you. And you failed miserably. He placed his black Centurion American Express card on the table with a soft click.
This dinner is on me.
Doctor, you looked down on all evening. The drive home that night was quiet. Alan felt an enormous weight lift from his shoulders. He had protected his peace. He had shown his son the truth without destroying the relationship, and he had exposed the hollowness behind the yacht, the jewelry, and the curated success. 3 days later, Ethan came to the modest house alone. They sat in the living room with coffee, the same room where Alan had helped him with homework as a boy. Dad, Sophia's parents are furious, but Sophia, she is different. She stood up to them. She told them she was ashamed. She wants to come apologize properly. Alan nodded. She is welcome here, but only if she is ready to learn. When Sophia arrived the following weekend, she looked transformed.